right, and we are good to go. Welcome everyone back to Casey Ezel Writer Life. I'm so excited. This video has been like 2 or 3 weeks in the making.
At least.
Yeah.
Shenanigans.
Yeah. But which is great actually, because that dovetails nicely with our topic today.
Yes.
But yeah, welcome back to my channel, everyone. I'm really excited to welcome our special guest. I always point the wrong way in this thing. I always forget that's weird. But our special guest over here is Katie Cross, who is a well-known YA fantasy author. Is that about right? Is that how you would introduce yourself? Yeah.
You got it.
Well-known YA fantasy author that I had the extreme privilege of meeting at MarsCon a couple of weeks ago. And we got to talking, and it turns out we might be the same person.
Definitely are. It was a little unnerving this morning, for sure. Yeah.
There are a lot of parallels between our lives. And so I just thought it would be interesting to have Katie come on, and we'll have a conversation about what does that mean, right? Because Katie's a mom. She is connected with the military. Is your husband currently active duty or former military?
No, we're out now. Yeah, we're former military.
Congrats.
Yeah. It's a big one. That was a big one.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so graduated military spouse and mom of 2. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Yeah. So awesome. As well as best-selling fantasy author. So we're not quite the same person in all of those respects, but where we're not, I have aspirations, man. So
we write different things, but we have so much in common. We share more middle ground than not, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, Katie, if you don't mind, tell my audience who you are, how you got started, what you write, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I'm so excited we finally made it here. There are some shenanigans that have ensued and kept us apart, but we're here and I'm excited about that. So I write young adult fantasy books with dragons and places that I say it's epic magic in wild places. So I'm really an outdoorsy person. We live in the mountains of Montana, literally in the mountains of Montana. I'll show you guys my view. You're going to hate me. This is the view from my window.
Oh, it froze up. Oh, there it is.
And then,
that's beautiful.
Oh, did it show it?
Yeah, it did. That's
okay.
Beautiful.
So we have a almost 10 acre plot that borders national forest. So I literally hike in the Montana wilds every day. So I write about magical places with dragons and magic and potions and spells in a world called Alkarra. We have, I think, over 55 books in the world of Alkarra right now. I have 55 books total. I think 40 of those are in Alkarra. So that's really exciting, and more coming. I do a new book a month, and I freaking love my job. It's the coolest job. I got into it sort of sideways, like a lot of authors do. So I actually was a pediatric registered nurse. I was the charge nurse on a medical floor in a kids hospital, and I was traveling the world and living in a downtown and having a blast. And then I met my husband and married the Army, and he wrecked my career. I always say, everyone warned me, he's going to be gone all the time. He's going to miss your birthday. And I was like, I don't need him, so that's fine. But no one told me, by the way, your career is probably going to crash and burn, because he was in a bunch of different trainings. And so we moved every 6 months for a while. Yeah. And I couldn't work as a nurse. And so I found myself just stuck in southern Alabama in a sweltering hot summer, far from mountains to climb. And I didn't really have anything to do. And so I went through a quarter life crisis at 25 and decided, well, I love writing. I'm going to go back to my roots. And so I just started writing, and over a series of events, my first book, Miss Mabel's School for Girls, came to light, and I published it, and it had a really great reception, and I haven't looked back. That was almost 10 years ago now that the ground was sort of swept out from under me, and it put me on this whole new path I never expected. So I work full-time as a fantasy author. I've worked full-time as a fantasy author for, I think, 6 years. 4 of it I was scrapping, where I was like taking care of kids in their house at night and during night shifts, like writing books while my husband was out training or deployed or something. And once I had kids, I stopped working as a nurse and I took on full-time writing. So now we live in Montana. We have two very spunky, adorable feral children that are 4 and 7, way too many dogs. And I feel like I'm just like living the coolest life ever. I'm so grateful for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love I love listening to the joy that like reverberates through your voice when you talk about your like where you live and your kids and your dogs and you know the things that you get to do. That's really cool. One of the sort of things that I've been doing with this channel is documenting my transition from, you know, being a full-time military officer to full-time-ish writer. Like I'm not really a full-time writer because I do have another job, but I kind of have that job because I want it.
Oh yeah.
And because I am, you know, I'm confident that I could live on my writing if I wrote full time. I just don't write full time right now. So
yeah.
I could live. I'm not sure I could pay for my house, but I could live. So, no.
we would eat,
yeah,
but we might be living in cardboard.
we would. I would be able to pay for my house, but barely.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Is that like I'm trying to build that ideal life that like I spent 23 years kind of, you know, daydreaming about while I was in the military. And I think that's one of the things that's cool about this, you know, being a writer, especially in today's day and age where, you know, you do have so many other options for publishing. It's no longer strictly, you got to get your book to an agent who's got to take it to New York, who has to put it in front of, you know, certain publishers in order for you to even have a hope of making a living at this. You can do it any number of ways. You know, you can do it through Kindle exclusively. You can do it completely wide and through direct sales. You can do it, you know, and there's pros and cons to all of those approaches. And I just, it's fun for me to see someone who has built the life that they want, because that's kind of like what I'm trying to document with this channel. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's taken a good 10 years to land, but that's probably the coolest part of being an author, and the flexibility of writing is it's a little bit easier to like go and do.
Yeah.
Right? Like whatever, like create what it is you want. I mean, my husband works, and so we have to kind of go to his job, but building the ideal like life also helps me write better books. And so the readers like get better books. So it's just this really cool cycle that I love seeing authors who are fighting for that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So you have pretty little kids, actually.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So mine are so my oldest is an adult. She's in college. She's I would call it 75% out on her own. I really just I just really pay for things, and she handles her business, and then I, you know, occasionally write a check.
Yeah.
So,
that sounds pretty ideal to me.
Yeah, it's a good life. You can get it. But even my youngest is 9 years old, and sometimes we still struggle. My youngest and we still struggle with, you know, boundaries when mommy's writing, and, you know, someone wants mommy's attention or whatever. Talk to me about that.
Oh, boundaries. What a fun topic. Yeah. So I had to make a really intentional decision to have boundaries that couldn't be crossed with my kids around work. And so actually that came down to daycare for me. So my son is in 2nd grade, so he goes to school and he's fine. But my daughter is in kind of like a preschool-esque program where she really is only gone for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that was just not enough time to run my company. And so I found a daycare that could take her, that she actually takes the bus to her daycare after her early like kindergarten. And then she's there until I pick her up. I pick up my son and then I pick up her. Yeah. Because in Montana, there's not quite as many resources as everywhere else. There's just not as many people. And we're far enough away from a city that, you know, it can be harder to kind of find those things. So that allows me the time Monday through Thursday, a dedicated 6 hours where I not only have like firm boundaries that way where the kids are just somewhere else, I have really firm boundaries with myself. So I have my neighbor and I take turns driving the kids to the bus. So like today I didn't have to drive the kids to the bus. So like the moment I stepped back in the house, I was ready to work. Like I'd already taken care of breakfast, I already done my workout, I already had my tea. Like I literally just walked right to my desk and I just started writing working on my next manuscript.
Right.
So it comes down to just tactical efficiency, like really down to the nail. And then my daughter's in her daycare all day Friday. And I actually was like, okay, I told her, we call her Warrior Princess because we don't use my kids' names on social media. I think it's a relic of being in the military and all of the debriefings I had to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we call her Warrior Princess. So I was like, well, we're going to have Friday together. Like I won't work on Fridays and then it'll be you and me time. And she was like, I'd rather go to daycare. So I was like, okay. So now she goes to daycare all day on Friday.
Yeah. She's
like a super extrovert. And so she's kind of like, no.
I love you, Mom.
Made it easier. So I have all day Friday too.
Yeah.
But I don't I love them more, which I totally am grateful for. Like, I'm glad she has friends. So that helps too. So I kind of try to separate church and state, so to speak, where I am mom when they're gone. And then I pick them up from school and I am no longer a CEO. I'm no longer a writer. Like I am then a mom and the computer is closed and it doesn't open again till the next day. So that in the evening I have me time, I have husband time, and I have kid time. And I have to like run the house too, because my husband works the psycho schedule.
Yeah.
So it's really about imperfection and like counterbalancing what I have. And frankly, like garbage comes up all the time. So last week we discovered that like a year or two ago, when we did not live in this house, skunks were infesting the space beneath our giant bathtub in our master bathroom because there's like this huge hole in the foundation that someone just left there instead of filling with concrete. And we had to deal with that. And so I lost an entire day of work and then a couple others just trying to get things figured out because I had to demo it. My husband was gone for a week and I was trying to figure out how to get some quick concrete because we're half an hour from a city, you know.
Right.
So all of these things come up and I just right. Luckily, like my brother runs a concrete company. Like he runs this like multi-million-dollar concrete company. So I just called him and I'm like, bro, like I got a quick create. How do I do this? So he just like walked me through it. It was awesome. So, you know, like stuff comes up and you just like pivot and roll. I feel like you just kind of like, well, I didn't get my words in today, but it'll be okay. I'll just get more in Saturday. So I ended up working Saturday when I try not to because I just had to catch up. So it's very imperfect. It's very messy, but it's okay.
How do you care for yourself in like, I guess what I'm trying to say is when stuff gets messy, one of the things that I struggle with is not beating myself up for getting off track or getting off schedule or getting behind. You know, that's like an ongoing battle, ongoing process. So what do you do to like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think my gut response, which we're going to go with because it's usually the most correct, is I've learned how to trust myself. So like this last week, I said to my husband, like on one of our nightly calls, I recapped the horror that was my bathroom. And I just said, I didn't get any work done today. And I am like so behind. And this is going to be bad if it keeps going because I have people, I have deadlines and people in my company that are waiting on me. But I just said, I trust myself to figure it out. Like I trust myself to make it happen. And I actually had a coach that once said to me, she's like, what is your definition of success? Like she actually made me like burrow in like on the spot. And I was like, that's a really big question. I don't know. But she made me burrow in. And what we ended up coming up with, because that's a hot one if you really like start digging into it. What we came up with is success is when I pivot, right? So success isn't meeting a deadline. I mean, that is successful, but real success, like the chewy good success, comes when you pivot with whatever is coming at you, right? And then trust yourself to show up. So like ridiculous amount of poop in this like tub space that these skunks had burrowed in. And like so much cleanup and bleach in my life. I can't even tell you. It was just ridiculous. And
Yeah.
I had really hot deadlines that I was sitting on, and I just said, we're just going to deal with this disaster right now. We're going to be efficient, and then I'm just going to figure it out. I don't know how. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it did. And I was up till 11 o'clock a couple nights, but other than that, I figured it out, and I started this week back on track with where, for the most part, I need to be. I'm still sort of coming back on track.
That's awesome. That's such a like that's such a nitty gritty. I mean, no pun intended. Nitty gritty success story, right? Like, because I've been thinking about so this my planning system that I use, and viewers of the channel know that I cannot stop talking about this. But my planning system that I use was developed by
I've heard of it. Yeah, yeah.
Was developed by Sarah Cannon, and who's another author, and she does videos here on YouTube and everything. But she talks a lot about like how success is not reaching a milestone, right? And like yes, you are successful when you finish a book or when you meet a deadline, but that is not, getting that thing or reaching that milestone is not the thing that's going to make you happy and give you joy in your soul. What is going to give you joy in your soul is moving your life in the direction of it being what you want it to be, if that makes sense. Moving forward towards building that life that you desire, that you dream of. And I think that, I hadn't really considered the like pivoting aspect of it before, but that's pretty critical too, right? Because we all know, like in some cases, literally poop happens, right? I mean,
so much poop happens.
Man. So, I read your Facebook post on that.
I think there's
oh my gosh.
It is literally like a nightmare. Like you look at it, and I didn't even post the pictures of all the poop because I was like, no one wants to see that. But anyway, so there's two things there. Pivoting removes failure, right? So when you're thinking about success, usually like success, the opposite is fail, right? Sure. So when you look at success as pivoting, you remove that whole failure thing. So it's like, I didn't meet this deadline, but I had to swerve or I had to pivot because something just came up in my life. Or I didn't meet this deadline, but like I was talking to my readers or whatever it is, right? So I think part of the reason thinking of success as moving with what you're doing and pivoting expectations removes that sense of failure. And so you aren't as hard as on yourself. You're not like, oh, what am I doing? Why did I miss it? I'm so bad at this. I'm failing always, right? The other thing that I really like about what you explained with Sarah is when you focus on who you want to be and not what you want to do as an author, it changes the way you show up for your readers, right? So for this weekend, I mean, these deadlines are for books to launch on time. And these are really highly sought after books that my readers are like not going to be pleased with if I don't have the time. But also I made a promise to these readers that every first Friday of the month, I have a new novel for you, right? I made this promise and I want to be the author that delivers that. I want to be an author that says, I show up for you when I say I do, because you're important and your escape into this fantasy world is really important, right? Right. So I think that's the other thing about what Sarah's saying. She's saying the same thing. It's more about who you want to be on the other side versus what you're doing. Yeah. Because success is like, I achieved this thing. But usually when you achieve that thing, you're like already on to the next one. Right. Right. Yeah. Like you're not even thinking about it. But which I think is taking you closer to who you want to be, then it's powerful.
Yeah, which I want to unpack that for a second too here, if I can. I hate using words like I want to unpack, but whatever. Here, this is where we are now.
Good, though. It's good. It's a pro. This is who we are.
Yeah, one of the methods that I've been using with some success with myself in trying to build that life, that I want, is really focusing on taking those wins, right? On my, viewers of the channel, hopefully they know. If you guys don't know, hit me up in the comments and I'll explain. But we have a private Discord server that's open to members of my my like mailing list where we hang out and talk about creativity and books and a lot of Midjourney art lately. So, but one of the channels, yeah, it is super fun. And you should all join my mailing list and go hang out there because we would love to have you. But one of the channels that we have on there is one called Taking Your W's that I specifically set aside for members of the server to post in there anytime they had a win, big or small, whatever it is. Just because I think, one of the sort of pernicious aspects of hustle culture is this idea of, okay, cool, that was good job, move on, go to the next thing. And I think that, I think there's a balance to be had between resting on your laurels and only ever, being like, oh yeah, I did this thing, it's great, I'm done, I don't have to work anymore, and not paying any attention to your accomplishments so that you're constantly striving for the next thing. Because if you're doing that, then at least for me, I find that I'm still not living the life I want to lead. You can be hungry and still celebrate when you accomplish something. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, absolutely. I think
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think it comes down to being present in the moment. Like, I think really that's all it comes down to is like, I'm going to sit in this for a sec. Like, I did it. Yeah. Like, this is really cool. Like, yay. Yeah. Like, even if it's like 10 seconds that you just like are present in that moment of accomplishment. And like, I had a huge win today. Yeah. That was really cool. I love that you like have people share it on your server, because that's even more powerful then. Because when you're like putting it into the world at next level for other people to see, and then you can share it and connect over that, that's so powerful.
I think so too. And the key there is the connection piece, right? Like, it's at so much, this idea of needing to connect, I think is so often at the bottom of all of the things that we do. All of our motivations are oftentimes about, are we connecting, and are we connecting in the way that we want to connect with the people that we want to connect with? And I think, I'm glad you agree. I think it's important that people celebrate, acknowledge when we do something, like for you, right? Like, you're like, well, I poured Quikrete in -10 and it was successful, and now I no longer have a hole in my house. Like, that's a big win, right?
I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah, I will say I feel like I celebrated that one, because by rubbing it in my husband's face. Thanks for being gone, loser.
Time doing what you're doing.
Yeah, just over here running the house. Don't worry about it. Just kidding. He was awesome. But then that gives the opportunity, when we share our wins, then my husband loves to celebrate me. Yes. Like, he's so cool that way. So he's like, you killed it, honey. You're freaking awesome. You're a rock star. He loves to do that with me. And I love to do that with him and the kids. So it brings that connection back to its importance. Like, we have to give and receive. And that's hard. Yeah. And we have to receive from ourselves, right? Like, the accolades. I think most of us, most of the time, are just trying to satisfy ourselves, and we never give ourselves the satisfaction.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that's true too. And it's, one of the aspects of 20 books to 50K, like their sort of catchphrase, I guess, is a rising tide lifts all boats. And they're not the only ones that use it, but they use it all the time. We say it at Chris Kennedy Publishing all the time, because you're exactly right. Like, it's sometimes, especially as a writer, I think, because it is such a solitary endeavor, it's very easy to look at yourself and be like, well, I'll give you my own example, right? It's very easy to look at myself and then look at someone like you who writes, publishes a book a month and be like, there is no freaking way I will ever do that. That's insane, and maybe that's true, right? Because your life is not my life, and your pace is not my pace, and really there's nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't mean that I can't look at you and be like, dude, my friend is a badass. She publishes a book a month. Her readers love her. She's making a living, doing very well as writing full-time, YA fantasy with her direct sales. She's created this incredible world that her readers love to get lost in. Like, by celebrating your success as well, I think it can, again, pivot that idea of, oh, I'm so inadequate, to, well, that's really something awesome that I can do. And what can I pull from that fits within my life? Right. Because I obviously can't make myself a carbon copy of you.
Well, you wouldn't want to. We don't need another one of me.
Yeah, exactly. I still have a full-time job. My family has different needs. We live in a different place. My writing style is different. I write different stuff than you do. So trying to duplicate exactly what you do isn't going to work for me. But trying to pull out useful bits, like, this idea of, okay, I set things up so that when I walk into my workspace, I'm ready to get to work. Like, I don't have to, F around and play on Facebook or do any of these other super terrible distraction things.
It's so real. It's so real. It is, though.
Scrolling Instagram. Yeah. I mean, I think those are useful. That's where it's useful to not necessarily compare, but to draw from other people. Is that what do you?
So let's dig into this. Okay. Because I was hoping we talked about this, because there's this whole other thing happening that you're not aware of. So let's bring your readers up to speed a little bit. So we went to MarsCon, and it was my first time being guest of honor at a con, and I was super excited.
And you did a great job. Exciting.
Thank you. I loved it. It was so fun. So I was in my head every morning busting through what my coach and I call squirrels. And squirrels are those, like, you're not good enough. Yeah. What are you doing here? They're going to figure out you're an imposter, blah, 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 right? So you and Marisa did this really sweet after action review of MarsCon that I watched, because I was so excited about your channel when I found out about it that I was like binge watching it for hours. Okay. Like, I just loved all your interviews. I think I was like commenting at every other minute. Like, it was just so fun. I just loved your channel. So when you invited me, I was so excited.
Thank you.
So I was listening.
Thank you for commenting, and for anyone watching, please comment. It helps the channel.
It's so
grow.
Fun.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so fun too, like, to see the other comments, respond to them. They're like, "Who's this lady?"
Yeah, for sure. Like, anyway. I mean, if you're watching this right now, just comment like the word onion, and I
love it. I love it.
And that way I can respond, and the channel will grow. It'll be great. Thank you.
And see what happens. Yeah. So you guys were so sweet, and basically we're saying the same thing. Like, we could never do what Katie does. I feel inadequate in front of her.
Yeah.
So when we were at MarsCon, the three of us and a couple other people were chatting, and every single convention that I've ever gone to, or like social event or anything, I always feel like I have to like bring myself down. So I always feel like if I gave them full Katie, they couldn't handle it. Right. I've been told my whole life. I know it's, oh my gosh, how arrogant is this? Right. So I've been told, or I've silently gotten the message my whole life. My family is amazing. They love me. They support me. But I've had people in my life that have said, you need to tone it down. Like, you're too confident, or your door is closed. People are like, you're never going to get married is one I heard. Your door is closed. You're never going to get married. You're too strong. Like, I heard that kind of stuff all my life.
Yeah.
So I've always just been aware, like, I need to fluctuate who I am in public so other people are comfortable. Right. So I went into MarsCon with this thought in mind, and my coach, Tiffany, was like, bullshit, basically. Sorry. Like,
it's okay. No. It's been 10 minutes, so we can swear.
Okay. Like, don't play your light down. That's ridiculous. And I was like, I don't know, like, other people are going to be uncomfortable, especially as guest of honor. It's different when you're guest of honor, like, you're in a different spotlight. So I was like, I don't know. I'll just see how I feel. Right. Like, I'll just tone it down. And there was a moment. So you had no idea this was going on. There's a moment in the, like, we were doing BarCon or something.
Yeah.
And you and Marisa were I think Marisa said, we're secretly talking about how much we hate you and love you because we like think it's amazing what you're doing, but we wish you could do it. She said something like that. And then you guys said something like equivocal in your video, and you were so kind about it. So I don't want to throw shade on you at all. I wasn't upset, but I was screaming in my head. Like, I went into a panic internally. Oh. Like, so don't feel bad about this. This is all me, right? You guys are being so kind. I just want you to know, you're looking at me as like this, like, shining beacon of I could never be her. I'm a failure next to her, which I do with a ton of people too, right? But in my head, I'm like, I'm not like I'm too much. Like I need to back down. No one's going to be my friend. Like if I show up this way, this is going to be really bad for me. Like, and then I start feeling like a complex of like imposter syndrome. You're feeling imposter syndrome. So we're both actually feeling imposter syndrome at the same time. And so in that moment, it was a triumph for me, because in that moment, as I was talking to you guys, I just mentally knew like this is the decision point where I decide how I stand or how I back down. And I think basically I was just like, it's awesome writing a book a month. I'd love to tell you how I do it. And that was like sort of how I didn't back down from it.
Yeah.
But also wasn't like too exuberant over it. So the reason I tell this story is because I want it to be clear that like we're all just people. And there are people that I look at, I'm like, I could never do what they do. And then once I hear myself say that, I'm like, bull crap. Like I trust myself way more than that. And I don't really want, like, one of my heroes is Pink. I love Pink. I think she's amazing, right? I don't necessarily like want to be a rock star like she is, but I love like the way she carries herself and holds herself and stands up for herself under pressure. So just like you were saying, I want to take aspects of these people and take those to make my ideal life. Because for sure, Pink is always feeling imposter syndrome, just like I was, just like you are. I think the difference is when we trust ourselves to work through it and show up the way we want to be, then it all goes away, right? So anyway, I hope that didn't upset you, because you should not be. I said to my husband, I was like, Marisa and Casey were so kind in their video to me, because he knew what I was fighting. He knew that I was like, oh, I gotta back down. That was how I knew I could marry my husband, is because I never had to back down to him the way I had to other men. So anyway, so just food for thought. So you knew what was going on in the background for me, and we were actually on the same path.
You know what? Can I just take a minute? Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's a lot of vulnerability, and I'm actually really honored that you would share it with me, but also share it on my channel. So thank you very much for that. And it is interesting food for thought, because the truth is, you know, I've had the same thing going on, right? Like I've had people tell me that I'm intimidating because, you know,
my favorite.
because I can be very directive. You know, I was a military officer for 23 years. When I am convicted about something, I'm not shy about expressing that.
Put it.
You know, I'm very directive, and I'm direct, and I'm directive when I need to be. Did you see the knife hand just come out? There you go.
We actually call it the command hand. So I was like, don't command hand me, because my husband will sometimes do. I'm like, no. No, because he was an officer in the Army too. I swear it's like,
anyway. Because this is too aggressive, so instead you do this.
Like, put the officer away, please. Thank you.
That's funny. That's funny.
So I know, like, as a woman in the military, you've probably faced the exact same thing. And I think, I mean, even men face this, right? I don't think they face it to the same cultural extent as women.
I think it's just different. It's different.
It's just different, right?
Yeah.
It's just different. And I think there are different societal expectations, right? And I think the era of the woman coming out in her power is like here. I think we're seeing that everywhere, and we're normalizing it for like, there's a reason we call my daughter warrior princess. She's like going to rule the world. She's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, but you know, that sort of emotion, like that evokes emotions and stuff in people, like it pulls things out.
Yeah.
And at some point as an author, like you have to deal with that and then ask, who do I want to be for my readers? Right. And how does that show up that way? So anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Who do I want to be for my readers, but also like, who do I want to be for myself? You know? And I'm so grateful that you chose, I was about to say that you chose violence just because it sounded cool. I'm so grateful that you chose to you know, embrace your confidence and you know, kind of attack that conversation by saying, yeah, it's awesome. And I'd love to tell you more about how I do it. Because really that was what Marisa and I were trying to, at least I think what Marisa and I were really interested in, was kind of the how, like, holy shit, how, I was having another conversation with, another author friend of mine, and I will not mention his name because I don't have permission to, but people can probably figure it out. But this individual and he's a doctor, he's an MD, and he has a full-time practice, medical practice, and the three of us were in a conversation similar to that. And I think you went to bed, and afterwards he was like, holy shit, how does she do that? And I was like, she said first of all, she said she didn't start out that way. She had to work up to it, and what we're specifically talking about is like your daily word count, right? Of being able to write like 9,000 to 10,000 words a day within your workspace, which is still amazing, and mad props to you. But that can be an intimidating number. Now, let me caveat that by saying that's not your problem. That's my problem with that number. For real. It truly is, because I have in my head this expectation of what is possible for me. But I was thinking about that recently because I had an 8,000 word day, which I texted you about because I was super excited.
I was so excited. Yeah, that was so great. I love that you texted me too.
And then 2 days later, I was like, I need to, I wonder if I can do this again, or if I've like burnt myself, and like scorched my neurons. And so 2 days later, I had a 5,000 word day. So like, it was like, oh, I can do this, but it's a matter of flipping that mindset. And, because for whatever reason, I had this conception in my head of this is what's possible, based on my work schedule and what else is going on in my life. But if I think that something is the limit of what's possible, then that's the limit of what's possible, as opposed to if I try something else, then maybe something else is possible, and to get back to our friend, the doctor, he has a point, right? He's like, this is, the word count that I do is comfortable for me. It's what I'm good with. It's what allows me to still show up, not only for my readers and for my family, but also for my patients, which is kind of important.
Like really important.
Like, and the truth is I'm not going to go full time as a writer because I spent 10 years learning how to be a doctor, and investing in my medical practice. And I'm not going to give that up. And I guess I bring all of that up to say two things. One is that obviously everyone's different. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's ideal life is different. And two, the only thing that is keeping us from progressing towards that ideal life, I probably shouldn't say the only thing, because circumstances do happen.
Sure.
But I think you can
happens.
Right. Yeah. Poop happens. But I think you could still make progress even when that stuff happens. So if you are not making any progress towards, and when I say you, I mean me, if I'm not making any progress towards that ideal life, the problem is not external. The problem is there is something in my mindset that has decided that there is a limit that I cannot cross. And I really need to examine that and see if those limits are actually real, or if it's something that I can change, or something that I can massage, or something that I can work around, or something that I can pivot,
or even want to change,
want to change. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I don't know if you remember, but when we were having this conversation at MarsCon, I said, it's awesome. I'd love to tell you how I do it.
Yeah.
And then I said, it's all mindset.
Yeah.
And you and Marisa were like, oh, and I was like, I was telling myself I couldn't. Yeah. And it turned out I loved it. Like I could, and I tried hard to get there, and I worked really hard, and I was really like efficient, and I tracked my words, and it took me a while to get comfortable at 10,000 words a day. But eventually I got there, and I was like, I'm happy here. I'm going to stay here. This is really fun for me. Where some people are like, that freaking sucks. I hate it. I tried it. I did it. It's not fun. Awesome. But it's all that idea of, I decided these are my limits, and to go on. I had, I don't know if you've ever met Elena Johnson. She writes Clean Romance. Mm-hmm. She launched like 90 books one year, like something ridiculous. Holy and, or like, I don't know, it was like a book a week or something.
That's insane.
She writes really, really fast, and she's a really big name. And I was talking to her because I said, I don't want to be the person that inspires like mindset issues in other people like
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
Like when you like, how do you tell people about your process without coming across as too much? And she just said, my process is mine and I own it.
Yeah.
And I worked for it and I like it. And that's just what it is. And I think authors need to just come to that point where they say, this is my ideal life. This is what I want. I know anything is open to me, but right now I'm choosing this. Then who knows? Like maybe in a year I'll have a totally different business model and I'll only do a book a quarter. I don't know. Like I'm just leaving it open to whatever happens. The important thing is that we recognize it's in our heads and we just have to like tweak what we're telling ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's huge. That's really huge. You know, and I'm thinking about this too, because we have a we have a writers group, like a group chat associated with Chris Kennedy Publishing, where a lot of people are on there. And it's a very fun place. We do a lot of joking. There's a lot of memes.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what that place is like.
Yeah, it's super fun. But one of the things that we talk about a lot is, people will post on there their wins for like, yeah, I got X amount of words today. And I think that it would be very easy to fall into the trap of, again, negative comparison versus the idea of celebrating with your friends that, yeah, bud, you did it. Good job. Good work. That was what you needed to do today. And that was what you wanted to do today. And I celebrate with you. So,
yeah. Well, there's so much power in just like putting that good energy back into the world too, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be motivating for you. Like, oh, I could feel down about this. And maybe I do feel a little bad about this because I didn't meet my goal, but I'm gonna like take this for good. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Forward, Yeah.
Exactly. One of the guys on that chat, he's a CKP author named Nick Steverson. He writes Space Dragons, actually. He's a really cool dude. He he lives in Northwest Florida, and like his day job is he drives a liquor truck. And so his observations, he like delivers liquor to various liquor stores and stuff. And his observations about people are freaking hilarious.
Hilarious, I bet. He probably sees some interesting stuff. The final thing I want to say here, like before we close this out, to either anyone that identifies with me or anyone that has this like mindset trap that they find themselves in, which is everyone listening, right? All of us get into mindset traps. One thing that my coach said to me after I got back and I was like, I did it. Like I didn't like play myself down. I owned it and I was able to help people and it was really cool. And no one, I said at the end, I was like, no one unfriended me. Like everyone was still friends with me. I thought they would go away and leave me alone, but they loved me anyway, Yeah. One thing she said is she goes, Katie, there are people in the world that don't even consider putting limits on themselves. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And all of us can think of someone like that, right? Whether it's someone in our personal life. I have, so a couple of my favorites, I already mentioned Pink. I just love Pink. Amy Porterfield, if anyone is on the online business entrepreneur space, Amy Porterfield is someone that I look at. Like that woman shows up, she's not going to dim her light ever. She just shows up in this amazing, powerful way and just gives and is phenomenal. I really love Amy Porterfield. And then Gina Carano is another woman that I really love and like look to as someone who, no apologies from her, right? Like, I love that. And so I think if you are stuck in that mire, like when I get to that place, like I gotta tuck in, I gotta play small and protect. It's like, no, like none of my heroes would do that right now. In fact, this is where they would stand up with the most honesty. Right. And like be that. So that's just something that kind of helped me work through those.
And you know what's interesting? Like you're talking about this and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, dude, that used to be me. Maybe it still is me. Right. Like I mean, I decided I wanted to be a dragon rider. So I became a pilot. Like there were a lot of people who told me that I couldn't do that. There were a lot of people who told me that I was never going to make it through the Air Force Academy. And there were times when, it looked like maybe they would be right, but they weren't, there were a lot of people who told me I would never make it through pilot training. And there were definitely times when it looked like maybe they would be right, but they weren't.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah, but they weren't, So I don't know, maybe
So this is where you lean back on trust with yourself.
Yeah.
Like where
Yeah.
you can actually look back and say, I've always shown up for myself.
Yeah.
You've just never acknowledged it,
Yeah.
right? Like you retired from the military flying helicopters for 23 years. Like so many, like I heard about you, like your reputation preceded you. So when I got to MarsCon, I saw your table across the way and I was like, I know that name. How do I know Casey Ezel? And then DJ or Dave Butler was like,
Oh,
sweet,
Dave.
Casey's here. And then Nick was excited you were here. And then my assistant, Mike, who like, he flew out to help me with the table. He was like, she's awesome. Like he knew about you and he was like
Really?
telling me about you. And someone else was like, you're going to, oh, it was Erin, the guest liaison. She's like, you're going to love Casey. She's
Oh,
like right up your alley. So like all these people, there's like all this buzz around Casey,
that's
right?
funny.
So I was like, oh, this is awesome. I finally get to meet her. She's
Yeah.
like this helicopter pilot. And the word badass was attached to your name with every single one of them.
Oh, that's kind.
Right.
Yeah.
But then like if we can like take that in and actually like own it, like I'm
Yeah.
learning how to do,
Yeah.
then that trust comes.
Yeah.
Like I've done this before. I know I've got this. Like I can do this. And then it's
Yeah.
just so much easier.
I think it's, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And it's, I think it's one of those things too, that probably, you know, every life has a season, right? Like there's seasons of, or every life has multiple seasons, where there's seasons of, I guess I just never thought about it, you know, like, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't occur to me to put limits on myself. Yeah. And sometimes, I don't know. And I guess sometimes it does. And so it's in those times that it does, I think, when we need to recognize that that's what we're doing. Because I think for me, that's the big thing, is like recognizing that I'm imposing my own limit and examining, okay, well, is this a limit that needs to be there? Yeah. Good discussion.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Thanks for, I think you deserve the same accolades for vulnerability, right? Because you were just processing a lot of like closely held things. And it's so important that people in general just have these conversations, and for readers to know like the people behind the story. You know, I think if I were to meet J.K. Rowling, this is the stuff I'd want to talk to her about. Like, how did you deal with imposter? Like that real stuff that I would want to hear from authors that I'm reading about, because we are all human. And I think we want to know that about the authors that we read from. So it's a cool discussion. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining in.
Awesome. I love this show.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're so kind. I appreciate you. Let's see. So we've been talking for, I guess it's about almost 50 minutes. Where can people find your books?
Best place to find my books is katiecrossbooks.com. They're available on all retailers, but if you go to my website, I have a reading order, like up on the top menu, you can click reading order and it'll show you the books in order, or you can go to like the ebook or audiobook or paperback collection, and they're all listed in our suggested reading order. So you could literally go from one to the next to the next. You'll get a couple of dollars off the retailer price on my website. And then you get exclusive stories that aren't on the retailers, but are on my website, and you can just breeze right through them. All of my books are available in ebook, paperback, and audio. And I launched a new novel, so 70 to 90,000 word book every first Friday of the month. And then sometimes we have launches on the third Friday of the month. So you can expect it the first Friday every single month in ebook, paperback, and audio. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just had one come out. Congrats.
So. Thanks. Yeah, it was a big one. That's been a reader request for a while. And now the one next month that we're behind on because of poop. Is starting a new series. It's my most fan requested series. They've been requesting it for years, and we finally are getting it launched next month. So I'm really excited.
So real quick, let's talk for just a few minutes so tell me about how the concept of series works in your overall, because the whole world, all of your work is set within this world, right?
Yeah.
So what is a series like? How are those embedded in there?
Yeah, good question. So Alkarra is my fantasy world, and everything that I've published in my fantasy, except for like a short story collection, happens in the world of Alkarra. So you start with the Dragon Master trilogy, and chronologically, it's one of like the first like trilogies that you'll encounter. So you can meet characters that you'll see that come after. So you read that trilogy, and then it fast forward like 80 years to the next series, which is the network series, and that's about Bianca. So the Dragon Master trilogy is about Sana and Isadora. They're dragon riders, big magic users. Like Isadora discovers like all this power in this new magic system, and Sana is a dragon rider, basically that bonds with a wild dragon and has to like save all the other dragons. So they have these two separate stories going on at this really climactic time.
Yeah.
In the world of Alkarra, and then you speed ahead like 80 years to Mildred in the network series and Bianca, and then Bianca gets 8 books across 2 series. Well, in the midst of that, I always like gauge the next novel I'm writing off what my readers want. So I actually have a Google form that I share out intermittently and my readers save. So when they have a story they want, they just put it in the reader request form. And then that helps me decide what books to write next. So the number 1 request was more Sana and Isadora.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm doing the series that like covers the gap of those 80 years. Very that cool. Spans between them, because they have like a long life. They live 120 years because they live in a magical forest. But so I'm doing this 9-book series that covers that gap. So you'll eventually be able to go in and just read across like 150 years. Yeah. But then I also had readers requesting, like, I would just put in stories about historical figures, right? Like there's a high priestess named Vittoria. There was a sword maker named Andre that his swords play a big part. And so the readers are like, we want this story. So I'll go back and write those novels. And we call that the historical collection. So it's all these historical stories in Alkarra. So we have, and then we have the reader request series. So I take reader requests for short stories, and every like 8 weeks or so, we publish a new 10,000 plus word short story in ebook and audio and eventually paperback with these short stories that people are requesting in addition to the novels. So there's a new novel every month, and then the 10,000 word short stories. So it all intermixes. It comes from what readers want the most. So you're getting the most exciting stuff, like from an actual story. And yeah, it's a party. It's one of those worlds that it's a medieval secondary world fantasy. There's big magical forests, lots of magic systems. It's they're all witches. So it's kind of medieval, high fantasy, dragons, sword, sorcery kind of stuff, set across 55 books. So if you're looking for like a new fantasy, like high fantasy-esque world to sink into, you start with my free book Flame and just go all the way down.
Awesome. Yeah. Where do you interact with your readers? Where's your reader community based?
We have a Facebook group called The Witchery that you can join me there. I'm on Instagram. You can message me in the DMs. I don't really do a lot on Twitter, but I have a Twitter account. I think Facebook is the most active. We have a couple thousand people in The Witchery, and they're always posting. There's always something fun going on in The Witchery.
Yeah. I'll link all of those places in the description below, so people can come check it out if they want to do that. So to include your website, and I'll put the specific link for your free book out separate, so that people can come check. Kind of dive into this
so much. There's so much
created. So
it is really fun.
Gosh, Katie, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Like I said, I love your channel, so I was really excited to come on it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'll you'll have to come back. We'll figure out some.
We'll do a after action review for Fantasy.
Oh yeah. Sold. We'll do it.
Done.
We'll have
you mean Marisa? Yes.
Panel. Did you meet Haley H.Y. Gregor at?
I love Haley. Yeah, we spent some time together. I love her. She's so sweet.
She is. She's awesome. She's going to Fantasy too, I believe, unless something happens with her husband's deployment. Speaking of mill spouse problems. Yeah.
Yes. So, yes. How I remember.
But so maybe the 4 of us, maybe I'll see if the 4 of us want to do
that'd be awesome, because there's so much different experience between like levels, like between the 4 of us. Because I'll be guest of honor at Fantasy, so then we can get Haley's new approach, your approach, my approach. Would be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'll make a note of that. All right, guys. Well, if you liked this video, I would love it if you would give me that Chuck Yeager thumbs up. And go check out Katie's links down below. Download her free novel and immerse yourself in the world of Alkarra and dragons and witches and magic and cool stuff like that. And thank you once again, Katie, for joining me on my channel. You guys, I love you so much. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'm Casey Zell, and this is my writer life.